Darkcast Network. Welcome to the dark side of podcasting.
Hi guys, I'm Courtney.
And I'm Lisa.
And we are the hosts of The Book of the Dead, a true crime podcast based out of New Jersey, where we tell you about the most obscure cases that you may have never heard of. So join us in the Book of the Dead library for another chapter of the Book of the Dead wherever you get your podcasts. Bye guys.
Hey everyone. Welcome to True Crime California. I'm your host, Cindy, and I'm glad you're here. Hey everybody, I'm back with another case. Sorry, I think I'm like a day late here. We got a no-fault eviction about a week ago from our landlords. They're going to renovate this entire house. And when we moved in, they didn't bother telling us that. So we've only been here for a year. We told them we wanted to stay here long term, and they basically just nodded and smiled. And now they're kicking us out because our country is a capitalist hellscape nightmare and fuck everybody. So we've been having to move all week, which has put recording on the back burner a little bit. So I apologize for being late. But in any case, it's October, my favorite month of the year. So nothing's going to bring me down for too long. And to celebrate October and Halloween and spooky season, I'm going to be doing cases, as many as I can find that are worth the time, that involve murders on or around Halloween night or Halloween themed murders. And I'm starting with a classic. It's a modern day classic. This occurred in 2004. I feel like a lot of the cases I've been covering have been a little bit more vintage. So I'm bringing it into the 2000s. And this is the case of the Napa Halloween Massacre of 2004. Now, the story begins at the beginning of 2004, maybe like around April, when 26-year-old Adriane Insogna and 25-year-old Lauren Mianza move in together into a 3-bedroom home in Napa, California on Dorset Street. Napa is wine country. It's a super sleepy town, very, very quiet, no real nightlife. A lot of families and pretty well-off families. Like I said, it's wine country, so there's tons and tons of vineyards. I would say anywhere from like Santa Barbara to Napa in California along the coast is going to be good wine growing land. But Napa is really known for it. So if anybody listening is a wine drinker, you have probably had some wine from Napa before. So it's a very rich, very quiet, very chill place to live. And Adriane had actually grown up in Calistoga, which is like basically in Napa. She was born in Napa. And then Lauren grew up in the same area. So they were friends before they moved in together. Adriane was a recent graduate from San Luis Obispo, where she attended until 2001, receiving her degree in engineering. So no, there was not overlap between her and Kristen Smart. They missed each other by about a year. But again, lately, everything's been coming back to Kristen, which is interesting. So Adriane, after graduating, was hired as a civil engineer by the city of Napa and decided it would be a great place to settle into her adulthood because she really liked the chill vibes. Lauren was similar. She was career oriented and enjoyed living in Napa because of the quiet vibes, because it was safe. I think there's two types of people. There's the type that grow up somewhere quiet and easy and they yearn for craziness and chaos. That would be me. So we move to big cities and we get kind of swept up in, big city living. And then there's people like Adriane and Lauren who just want to continue the chill. They just want to stay somewhere quiet, somewhere easy, somewhere nice. And that's what these two did. So I totally understand. Now, when I say Napa was safe, it still is. What I'm saying is before this case, there had not been a murder in Napa for over 2 years, which may not sound like much, but it is very significant. Now, big cities like LA, where I live, have as many as 300 or more murders per year. So comparatively, this place is like the Truman Show, which I'm dating myself by saying that. If you haven't seen it, it's a Jim Carrey classic. Check it out. Anyway, after a few months in the house, the two invite a third woman to live with them. This woman is 25-year-old Leslie Mazzara, who had recently moved to the area to be closer with her mother, or closer to her mother. She was already very close with her mother. Leslie was a former beauty queen from South Carolina who had just had like kind of a bad and weird breakup, and I'll talk about it in a minute. But she needed to be closer to her mom for support, and she just kind of wanted to start over. Now, Leslie was a little different than Adriane and Lauren because she liked to go out. She liked to date. She wasn't as career focused. She had like a fairly, serious job in South Carolina, but coming out to California, she was kind of taking it easy, living her young life, doing the 20s thing. And in fact, when she moved out to Napa, she landed a job as a hostess at a winery owned by Francis Ford Coppola. So again, not looking for a career, just looking for a job, looking to get back on her feet and enjoying her youth. Now, even though they were all very different, the three women got along really well, and Adriane at one point told her mom that she planned to live in the house as long as she was able. She loved the house, she really liked her roommates, everything was going really well. Now, as I had mentioned, Adriane and Lauren were both from the area, and as a result, they had friends from childhood who they were still very close with. One of these friends, Lily Prudhomme, considered Adriane like her best friend or one of her very best friends, and was close with Adriane's entire family, including like her mother and her sister. So it made sense that on the night that Adriane and Lauren moved in, Lily and her fiance Eric Koppel would not only help them move in, but celebrate with some glasses of wine that same evening. Now, when I say that Lily and Adriane were good friends, I mean, they were like super close. And in fact, just a couple of months after Adriane moved in, she and Lily got together to celebrate the 10-year anniversary of Adriane surviving a car accident that should have killed her when she was 16 years old and still in high school. This was a very significant milestone for Adriane, as she referred to that date of the accident as the night she was supposed to die, which, considering what happens next, lends an extra level of eeriness to this story. Now, as far as Lily and Eric go, they were engaged to be married, but they'd put their wedding on hold and weren't yet set on a date, despite having been together for nearly 8 years. Eric was very quiet and shy, but he was a really nice guy, really helpful with the move. And while he was quiet, Lily was very loud and boisterous. So they made for an odd but seemingly really good couple, sort of filling in the gaps on the other's personality in a way. Now, beyond these two friends, Adriane and Lauren had other friends in the area, and Adriane was also dating a man named Christian with whom she had been on again, off again for quite some time. Most recently, around the fall of 2004, Adriane had really started pushing for Christian to commit to her, but he kept telling her he wasn't ready, and this led to a lot of arguments between the two. And I totally understand this. They're in their mid-20s, and I think Adriane had always sort of been on this more mature track. She's trying to get to the adult part of her life. And what I have to tell you is I'm kind of with Christian here. Don't be in a hurry to grow up. Enjoy your youth. Go out, have fun. Shit only gets harder as you get older. Trust me, I'm an old ass lady. I'm 42. You want to enjoy the years while you can. But anyway, I think, this caused a lot of sort of arguing between the two. Nothing crazy, but they definitely were known for making up and breaking up. And it's they really liked each other, but they just couldn't get on the same page. Now, Lauren was single, didn't seem to be dating, and lived in the bottom room of the house with her dog. Now, Leslie, the newest roommate, who lived in one of the upstairs rooms next to Lauren, as I mentioned, loved dating, loved meeting new people, and was often out on dates, kind of always looking for Mr. Right, or maybe even just Mr. Right now. Before Leslie had moved to Napa, she did have a long-term boyfriend, but eventually had to break it off because his dad was creeping her out by calling her multiple times a day, quote, just to talk, according to him. And he would do this when he knew his son wasn't home. So his son was in a very serious relationship with Leslie, and this dad was just super creeping on her. Leslie eventually said he made her so uncomfortable that she couldn't continue the relationship with his son. So she broke it off with him and left for California to get a fresh start. Now, I believe just before this breakup, she had actually dated another young man who, after she broke it off with him, dedicated an entire website to her. And this wasn't a fuck Leslie website. This was a you're an angel on earth, I'm in love with you, I'll never get over you kind of website, which, while less like angry is also real fucking creepy. So there's something about her. I mean, she was a beauty queen, but I think she was also just a really charismatic person, and something about her just drove men wild. Anyway, everything went well at the house for a while, but on October 29th, 2004, the roommates ended up getting into a little bit of a, like, not a fight, but maybe like a stressed conversation over Leslie bringing home one of the men she was dating. Now, apparently, none of the women had had a single man stay the night to this point, and it hadn't ever really been something that came up in discussion, mostly because it hadn't needed to before this point. But apparently, beyond this never being something that they discussed, Leslie and this particular man friend were pretty loud that night, if you catch my drift. And Adriane and Lauren were both like not real cool with that, which totally fair. The trio had a house meeting and eventually came to the conclusion that they were all adults and that they could have men spend the night, but I do expect they probably laid some ground rules before they came to this agreement. But with this, harmony was restored to the home, and the young women went back to life as usual, at least for the next 2 days. On the night of Halloween, October 31st, 2004, the three women stayed home together and passed out candy, and as later confirmed by Lauren, they were all in bed by 11 p.m. Now, around 2 a.m., Lauren, who again was in the downstairs room, woke up when she saw the security light go on outside the house. Now, this happened from time to time, and she sort of just, told herself, oh, it's one of Adriane's cats walking around outside, go back to bed. Now, quick note. Does this remind anyone else of a particular case that is much more recent? This has Idaho murders all over it. And as we know, Bryan Kohberger was a big true crime person. So I'm wondering if he knew about this case, because if he didn't, that's a hell of a fucking coincidence. Like down to like the downstairs, upstairs, the downstairs roommate being left alive. Like it wouldn't surprise me if he didn't attack the downstairs roommate on purpose to make it like this case, because he's that fucking crazy. Anyway. So a minute or so after the light goes on, Lauren begins hearing what sounds like somebody moving around downstairs. And she's like, oh, it's probably one of Leslie's boyfriends. I didn't know they were coming over, but they're obviously trying to be quiet. I'll just leave it alone. Now, her dog started barking at this point, and so she quieted the dog down and tried to go back to sleep. Moments later, she hears what sounds like a fight upstairs, and then she hears Adriane yelling for help. She later said that she heard Adriane yell, oh God, please help me. Somebody help me. Lauren came out of her room, and as she was coming out, she saw a man running down the stairs. Now she panics at this time, which is totally fair, and she runs out the back door into the yard before realizing there's no way out from there. So she's like, oh my God, I'm stuck in this yard. If this man comes after me, he's going to kill me. Luckily, she saw the man run back out the way he came in through the front of the house. And as soon as he was gone, she ran back inside and went upstairs to help her roommates. Now, what she saw was horrific. Leslie was lying in her bed, I believe face down, in a huge pool of blood, completely covered by stab wounds and not moving. Adriane was crouched next to the bed, still able to talk, but bleeding profusely and very quickly losing consciousness. She was asking for help, so Lauren ran downstairs to call police from their landline, but it was dead. Now, I don't know if it was cut or if it just happened to not be working. She then goes back upstairs, checks on the roommates, grabs her cell phone, and runs out into her car while calling 911 for help. Now, I think it's very smart for her to get in her car. If the man is still there, if he's coming back, she's going to be a lot safer if she can drive away or just lock the doors. I know that when you're on the phone with 911, they're going to try to get you to help the injured victims, but like there was nothing that she could do at this point, and he could have still been around. So she calls 911, but unfortunately, by the time the paramedics arrived, both Adriane and Leslie were dead. Now, shockingly, police took this incident extremely seriously right from the jump, and with good reason. With zero solid leads and not a lot of evidence, the killer could be anyone, anywhere, and could strike again at any time. The residents of Napa were all terrified, and the families and friends of these young women were completely destroyed. They were just, and Lauren, having survived, like, the nightmares she endured, the trauma, I mean, it's unspeakable. It's just terrible. Friends and family held candlelight vigils in the victims' names, and it really brought many of their friends together in grief. Lily, Adriane's closest friend, was especially affected and had a very hard time in the following weeks and months. As a result, she decided it was finally time to marry Eric, with whom she had been on again, off again in terms of their marriage plans. In fact, what's crazy is they had originally been meant to wed on November 1st, the day that Adriane and Leslie were murdered. And she and Eric took it as a sign that they were meant to be, and thought that maybe if they had married on that date, none of this would have happened, because maybe, Adriane would have been at her wedding instead. Which I think is something that happens when people are mourning. Like, they come up with different ways to cope, like finding signs and meanings and things. And I totally understand that. And also, like, they're not wrong necessarily, right? So the two wed the following summer, and Adriane's mother and sister were invited to speak at the wedding in memory of Adriane, who absolutely would have been a bridesmaid, if not the maid of honor. Meanwhile, the police are going real hard on this case. Both Leslie and Adriane were stabbed to death, and while Leslie was killed in her bed and had no signs of defensive wounds, Adriane had put up one hell of a fight. Now, because of this, police expected to find the killer's blood in the room, as bloody knife handles tend to get a little slippery, which can lead to attackers accidentally cutting themselves on the blade. Add to that the fact that Adriane was a former student athlete, and police figured you'd have an attacker who was almost certainly injured. And they were right. In Leslie's room, on either a wall or a curtain by the wall, police found a spot of blood that they found did not belong to either victim. They took this blood and got a DNA profile and found it belonged to a white man of European ancestry who likely had blonde hair and blue eyes. It's crazy that they can get that specific, even in 2004, but they certainly could. Now, at the crime scene, they also found 3 cigarette butts smoked down to the filter, meaning whoever did this was outside pondering their decision for a while before taking action. Police ran these for DNA, and as you can guess, it matched the blood found in the house. And further, they found that the brand of cigarette was Camel Turkish Gold, which in 2004 was a new and difficult to find brand. So definitely not something everybody would smoke. So that would probably help them find their suspect. All they had to do is find people smoking that brand and go from there. So this was a great lead. But police did not release this information right away because they weren't ready yet to pounce on their suspect, and they didn't want people suddenly switching brands, right? Now, throughout the investigation, police interviewed something like 1,000 people. They got DNA from over 200 men in the area and hundreds of pieces of evidence as well. They also got DNA from basically anybody, any man who had been in these women's lives. Now, police initially believed that Leslie had been the target, as she was killed first while in bed. And, it makes sense because she was dating around. She had so many suitors. And also it looked as though Adriane was only killed because she heard the commotion and unfortunately got involved. Although police definitely checked in on Adriane's sometimes boyfriend, Christian, he had a rock solid alibi, and everybody was like, no, they're not at the point where he wants to kill Adriane. Like, most of the time, if you're not married to somebody and like legally bound to them, you're not going to kill them because they want more out of a relationship than you do. Like, you just break up, so it didn't make sense for him to kill her. And also everybody was like, no way. And also he had an alibi, and also his DNA didn't match, but they did look into him. So they focused on Leslie's love life because they're like, that's probably where we're going to get the best leads. And at first they really looked into the ex with the website as well as Creepy Dad, but both of them were like across the country in South Carolina. And, website friend was weird, but sweet. Creepy Dad just had proof that he wasn't in California, but like, what the fuck, bro? Like, so fucking weird. Really, really don't love that. So they keep looking at, all of her other men that she's dating and people that she's like hanging out with. Unfortunately, none of these suspects led anywhere. And after almost a year, it seemed like police were running out of leads. But remember, they still have those cigarette butts and had been smart in not releasing information about them to this point. Now, finally, they've collected all this DNA and they feel like they are running out of leads. So it's time to let this out into the public. And to clarify, they hadn't actually even told anyone that they had found cigarette butts. So it wasn't even just like, oh, we don't know the brand. They hadn't released any information about the cigarettes. So finally they say, hey, FYI, everybody, we found cigarettes at the location, like outside the house. They matched the blood of the suspect. Now, upon hearing this, Lauren, who had obviously, since moved out of the house, reaches out to police and she's like, hey, I only know one person in Adriane or Leslie's life who smoked. Now, that person was Lily's husband, Eric Koppel. Now that police have this information, they decide it's a good idea to release the specific cigarettes being smoked, noting their Camel Turkish Gold. Eric's family, including new wife Lily, heard this information and immediately knew Eric was the killer. And before he could be arrested, they convinced him to turn himself in. Now, I want to note here that Eric had given his DNA to police, but they hadn't run it as far as I know because he'd not been considered a suspect. And I think it was definitely the mix of his willingness to cooperate, the fact that he was so close with the family, and the fact that Leslie had so many potential suspects that kind of kept him off the police radar. But also the way he played along was super, super fucking scummy. Now, this was obviously super upsetting to people as they still couldn't understand why it took so long to catch him when he was right there in front of police. Again, a wolf in sheep's clothing. It was obviously also extremely shocking to Adriane's friends and family, including Lily, who pretty much immediately annulled the wedding and distanced herself from Eric the moment she found out what he did. Now, upon turning himself in, Eric offered no motive and did what all little bitch-ass motherfuckers do when they get caught. Pretended he didn't remember what happened, though he's like, yeah, I know I killed Leslie and Adriane, but I just can't remember any of the specifics. He basically said, oh, I have a drinking problem and I'm depressed, and that's why this all happened, and that's it. And that's all he would fucking say, which is really fucking irritating. He said the night it happened, he and Lily had been fighting because he drank too much and she was sick of his drinking. Apparently, like I said, he had a problem with this, which had been one of the main reasons they didn't get married before Adriane's death. So on this night, he was super drunk and Leslie was so angry with him that she refused to even talk to him. So Eric leaves wherever they are, and when he leaves, he's super pissed off. And while he's never admitted it, the police have a theory that he blamed Adriane for his problems with Lily, which makes total sense, really. If he's this much of a fuck up, if he's an alcoholic, he has depression, and he's really just kind of a bummer dude, then Adriane, who really had her life together and really cared about Lily, would of course suggest that he wasn't good enough for her friend and that Lily could do better. And I mean, with all things we know, I think it's fair to say she was right. So in Eric's shitty little brain, he decided that Adriane is to blame for his relationship issues because, of course, it's not anything he's done, right? He's just a victim. And so he decides on this night that he's going to do something about it. He, of course, can't remember where he got the knife, but he remembers breaking into the house and going upstairs and accidentally finding Leslie first. Now, as far as Leslie goes, he never gave a reason for killing her, and he didn't even really know her. So it was really just wrong place, wrong time, which is so fucking horrific. And it's also crazy that it sent the police on this wild goose chase for a suspect connected to her when she's just a very unlucky victim. So now they have Eric in custody and, being the great guy that he is, even though he can't remember what he did, he knows he did it. So he decides to plead guilty to all charges to avoid the family having to go through a trial, and in my opinion, probably much more likely to avoid the death penalty. So while he's sentenced, the family is still able to make impact statements, and Lily also made one, saying she could not love Eric any less, and apologizing to both families on his behalf. Eric is still imprisoned at this day with no chance of ever being released, and this is just such a crazy story because it's so random that he would murder his girlfriend's best friend out of jealousy. Usually love triangles involve the people who are romantically involved and not just a random friend that you're mad at. It's really fucking weird. And then for him to continue playing the supportive boyfriend, I feel okay, so there's the Idaho murders, but then there's also Gabby Petito. What was that guy's name? Another fucking Brian. What's up with dudes named Brian? No offense if there's any Brians listening. You're doing the Lord's work. making your name, giving your name a better name, as it were. But like that guy, when he's in that police interview, it's very clear that he like needs to be seen as like a good guy and like helpful. And I feel like that's kind of what's going on with this dude, Eric, as well. He's like, has to be seen as like the good guy, the helpful, stoic husband, like lifting his wife up in her time of need when he's the motherfucking killer. It's like so twisted how people are. It's so evil. And to just kill Leslie randomly because she was there, I mean, dude fucking sucks. I honestly think he probably would have attacked Lauren as well, but the dog was probably what stopped him. Anyway, I'm glad he's locked up forever, and I hope the families, find peace, as difficult as I'm sure that is. It's this time of year that this happened, and I'm sure they relive it every year. It's been 21 years. It's really fucked up, and that's my story. This one's a little bit short and punchy, as my old podcasting friend Diva used to say. But I think it's a really interesting case, and especially because of the way it ties into so many other cases. Not so many, but like definitely the Idaho murders, and then sort of getting like the mentality of the murderer being so similar to that other fucking Gabby Petito dude. I forget his name, something Laundry, and Brian Laundry, is that it? Anyway, fuck that guy. So anyway, hopefully you guys like this episode. Sorry it's a little late. I am literally sitting in my new house, so if I sound a little echoey, like my neighbors are having a party, my dogs won't stop licking their asses and barking. Like there's just so much noise at my other house. So I was like, fuck it. I have this halfway moved into house with nobody in it. So I came over here and started recording. And I think it's a little bit better. So hopefully this sounds okay. I shouldn't keep calling it out. I don't want anybody to focus on sound quality. I know a lot of indie podcasts have issues with it, but it's really important to me to get it fixed. So I'm just calling it out again. Anyway, I'll be back next week with another hopefully Halloween-inspired story. And thanks everybody for listening. Please like, rate, review. And until next week, stay safe.